Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our webinar series, Parenting Children with Special Needs in a New Reality. I am Aubrey Schmalley, owner of Sensational Achievements and creator of the Body Activated Learning Framework. And today I have with me Natasha Fenster. She does music with children, and I'll let her tell you more specifically about her background and her history. And also, we're going to be talking about how she is using body activated learning in her weekly groups with children, and how she's able to really find a nice balance between using everything that she knows as a music teacher with movement and activities that are really supporting a child's body and their ability to learn and engage and participate in the activities that she does. So welcome, Natasha, to our show. And I just want you to take a moment, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and then we'll start talking about body activated learning.
Excellent. Thank you, Aubrey. Well, as Aubrey said, I'm Natasha Fenster. I'm often known as a Music Together teacher here in Fairfield County, but I also, in addition to Music Together, I also teach acting and like early musical theater. So I'm kind of around doing a lot of things. My background is actually in music. So I went to music school, and when I came out into the real world, kind of moved my body, moved around lots of different jobs and finding my own path, if you will. After I had kids, I wanted to find an early childhood music program to experience music with my older son. He's now 16 years old. So about the time he was 8 months old, and I found Music Together and realized it was such a wonderful program. So I realized I could become a teacher. So I started teaching Music Together about 15 years ago. And then when he was 2.5, we realized he was having some there were some things like red flags. We had a 2-day a week preschool program for him, just 2 hours a day, but there were certain behaviors that he was exhibiting that didn't feel like he was getting what he needed. So we asked for a birth to 3 consult. And in that consult, we were told he had sensory issues. He didn't qualify for any services, but he had sensory issues. And we're like, what are sensory issues? We had no idea what they were. So I knew that he liked to hide under the table when I was teaching music. Like I knew that I thought he thought it was funny to be behind his mom hiding under the table. I had not realized that that was one of his coping mechanisms, making his world smaller. And so that was something I learned, because I then had the privilege of meeting Aubrey when he was about 3 years old, and helping work through and learning more about how to help him with his sensory integration. So gosh, what year is that? That's like 2008 now by this time, I
Yeah,
think.
I guess I'm gonna have to do math. 13
Yes.
years.
Well, he was born in
20,
2005, so I'm convinced it
yep.
was
All
2008 by
right,
the
there
time
you
we
go.
met. And I was recommended to do some listening protocols with him as well. So we did a listening program, and uh, we were encouraged to do some vision exercises with him and do some, get some evaluations there. So we kind of did a little bit of everything. And the more I learned how to support my son, the more I brought into teaching my music classes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that brings us up to body activated learning. I think, Aubrey.
Yes, and I just wanted to highlight something that you mentioned is you did reach out to a Birth of 3 program, and they said he didn't qualify. And
Nope.
I think, yet that there were a lot of things that he needed to help him kind of cope with the world on a day-to-day basis, that sometimes we find that happening, right? It's not a disability that people would necessarily categorize as needing like direct therapy from an OT or a PT in larger programs like in the educational system or in birth to three, more government organized spaces. But
Mhm.
they did recognize enough that there were sensory pieces to the puzzle, and there are, and I think the families who don't make it to a sensory integrative therapist, they know when they get a good teacher or someone who really just gets their kid. uh,
Mhm.
and you are known in our town as one of those people that you're not an OT or a PT, but you are the person who gets other people's children, and so they seek you out for your music classes. And I think that that definitely speaks to, the more people, whether you're a music teacher or a camp staff person or a personal trainer, whatever your background is, it's really having that knowledge that makes you just better able to utilize that if you are somebody who works with children, and kind of help the families feel like there's people in their corner that support them.
I absolutely agree with what you just said. And I didn't mean to gloss over it, but it did take us probably 7 months before we were able to find you. For example, we were pulling out our hair, calling places all over the county, not knowing where we were going to find support for him, scouring the internet, not finding a lot of information on what sensory integration was at that point. I'm glad to say that there's a lot more information out there, but we're very lucky to live in an area where we could get occupational therapy. But you're right that he was exposed to swimming teachers, preschool teachers, music teachers. I mean, I had to become his music teacher because he wasn't getting exactly what he needed out of the music teacher that I was taking him to.
Mhm,
Not that there's anything wrong with that person. She's wonderful, but it wasn't what he needed.
mhm.
And I was like, I know my son needs music. So I needed to become the music teacher in that scenario. But it is a lot. It
Yes.
can be a lot.
Yes, and you're always on the hunt for those matches, because you want your child to feel happy and safe and supported. You don't want
Hmm.
to just not take them to the activities because you can't find someone who kind of gets your kid. Um,
Yes.
and that actually does bring me to body activated learning, which I put together in 2015 for that exact reason. There's a lot of people out there that I think are in such a great position to connect with families and children, and just having an understanding of what a child's body or anybody's body really needs to kind of give them energy to their brain and their body, or to calm them, get them into the right place, and then get their bodies working for them. But also recovering, not doing too much screen time, not sitting for too long, really kind of making sure that you're helping kids use their body in the way that it was meant to, both for self-regulation and for participation, for being able to play and interact and socialize with the kids in their class and things like that. So you got, oh my gosh, let's see. In 2015, you were
Mhm.
first exposed to body activated learning because you were on my core team to first put it together. When did you start kind of using some of the activities and whatnot?
Oh, probably right away. As you would show me what my son was responding to, right away, I was using the strategies that were working for him. Those were the first strategies I was using,
Mhm.
honestly, right out of the gate, whether they were calming strategies or energy building strategies, depending on what was going on. But it made me a lot more aware. And I think sometimes, if I remember correctly, I know we've been together a long time, but every now and then I would have a child in one of my classes that was exhibiting something I wasn't familiar with, like a coping mechanism. And I would ask you for input and you would say, oh, have you tried this exercise? And you would show me one of your body activated learning exercises. And I'd be like, you know what, I'm going to adapt that into my classes. The
Mhm.
best part for me as a music teacher is I already am dealing with rhythm. Like I
Mhm.
already live in a rhythmic world in my classes. We have a variety of rhythms across 45 minutes, of course, But I have opportunities all over the place
Mhm.
to use them. One thing I noticed, my younger son, who's now 13, so about 10 years ago, and I remember pointing this out to you because you were really, really helpful with it. Um, every time there was a song in triple, he would start running.
Mm.
Not on any other song in duple, but if it was a song that was like ba 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 ba, he would start running around. And I remember bringing that to you, and you gave me strategies even for him. And he
Mhm.
wasn't the one that had the sensory integration. He was my neurotypical kid, as far as
Right,
I knew, you know.
right.
But so I definitely have been utilizing a lot of the exercises. In fact, I also became an acting teacher along the path. So I started just as music together. And then I also started teaching acting classes, doing musical theater for kids ages 5 to 8, essentially. So I was dealing with bigger kids. And now that means choreography when you're doing music.
Mm.
And I've
Mhm.
been using some of your moves, some of the body activated learning moves
Oh.
as choreography pieces
No, that's
because
cool.
it
That's
helps
awesome. Yeah.
sometimes really focus
Yeah.
the children in their bodies in that moment,
Yeah.
which just helps them. It just helps in so many ways. I feel like every human being that deals with children should know about body activated learning because it gives you access to communicate with the child or children in the moment immediately, like
Mhm.
immediate access to help them break down that wall, because all
Mhm.
those frustrations seem to be coming out of a communication problem, whether it's communication within their body or communication with their body with the outside world.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
And really sort of building that like sensational self-awareness is what I
yes.
usually call it, right? Like
Mhm.
the if you're not familiar with body activated learning, quick recap, there are 4 categories of exercises. 2 of them are meant to be regulating. One is energizing, the second is restoring yourself
Mhm.
to a calm place, and then activating, really getting your vision to guide what your body is doing, connecting to your body, your muscles, your joints to be able to do everyday activities, and then regrouping. That includes stretching, vision breaks, anything that you might do to muscle through an activity that you need to then build in recovery from. And really using those 4 pieces in balance. You can use them in a sequence, or like you said, even if you're doing choreography, like maybe there's one part of the dance that's meant to be really energizing, and you do that before you go into something that requires more coordination, that's more
Mhm.
activating. And you're really, even just in that idea, and I love that. You're setting the child up for success because you're priming their body, and then you're
Mhm.
sending them into something that's a little bit more skill based, so that they can actually execute some of the things they're learning. So that's a really
Yes.
creative way to then
Mhm.
go outside the box of, like, all right, let's do our morning exercises today. It really is something that can be embedded in kind of the fabric of the activity, so that the child develops that awareness. Oh, I really like when I do this because it makes me feel X, or I know when can we do that warm up because that warm up is really, really good.
Mhm.
And they start asking for the things that they need.
Yeah, they do. And I keep my body activated learning book with all my lesson prep books. So like as I'm preparing my lessons for the week, I access that book just as much as I access anything musical or acting games or anything else.
You build the rhythm piece into a lot of your music classes. Rhythm,
Mhm.
pressure, and respiration are kind of the key elements to restoring, but you
Mhm.
also use rhythm, speeding up and slowing down, to increase
Absolutely.
that energy to your body.
Mhm.
So um with how are you seeing, because you do have kids in your class that are more neurologically diverse,
Yes.
that may or may not be receiving extra services. How do you see them respond to the exercises? Do you see them even more responsive than the typical kids, or do you feel like you need to kind of modify things? How are you, what kind of
I
feedback are you getting from using them with those kids?
I'm actually, I would say I'm getting a great response. Usually they will come out, those exercises will come out when I have maybe hit a challenge. Sometimes I go, like I said, I always have the book with me when I'm doing my lesson planning. But sometimes when I'm doing my lesson planning, I'm not necessarily picking out a certain exercise. I may be looking for, like you said, I might be looking just to have a warm up or something to get kids activated, or a calm down. Like, how can I transition a little differently? If I have a child with a who's showing me that they're having some kind of challenge,
Mhm.
whatever the challenge may be, whether it's a physical challenge or an emotional challenge or a communication challenge, because I see every different kind of challenge you could possibly throw at. Then sometimes I will go specifically and look for an exercise specifically for that child that I can incorporate for all the children to do. But I have noticed that because I've been using these methods for so long. I mean, it's really been integral in what I've been doing for over a decade at this point. Um, just because I had access to you. I had
Mhm.
access to you before you were able to create the book.
Right, right.
I'll go home and I'll lesson plan specifically if I find a child who's having a challenge. And by incorporating, by using it's going to depend on what the challenge is and what exercise I'm using to try to recover from it. And I'm able to very quickly, very, very quickly respond to that child's challenge. So I don't have that fear of a child quitting the class because they just can't handle it. They are returning, they are engaging
Mhm.
over and over again and requesting extra classes. So I'm finding, I know I have, I'm hearing from parents that in some cases, our classes are the only classes their child really gets to explore outside of their school, outside of their typical school, because we're the only ones that can adapt to their learning needs.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that this has become such an integral part of my teaching. It's so naturally part of how I teach that the children immediately are having access, regardless of what their challenge is.
Mhm.
One nice thing that's happened is I think that the environment I've been able to nurture. And again, I really do credit body activated learning and you for helping me with this, because it has become such a integral part of who I am as a teacher, that the environment is one of such high acceptance, because every child, every child, regardless of what their neurotype is, every child is going to have a challenge here and there. And to just integrate so seamlessly activities that every child can do, it doesn't matter that one child might be getting something more specific help out of it.
Mhm.
Every child is benefiting from it. Environment of acceptance and inclusion, and it just makes everyone better. And that's what I love about it. There's nothing that I could do with these exercises that will be damaging. They
Mhm.
will only it might benefit one child a little bit more or more specifically, but it is always beneficial for every child.
Mhm. So the body activated learning certification came after we put together the handbook again, as a way to get to people who maybe weren't physical therapists, speech therapists, OTs, counselors, whoever, but just anybody working with children in the community. So who do you think would benefit from getting the body activated learning certification?
Whether you're a camp counselor, a paraprofessional, a parent that might be homeschooling, if you are with children for an extended amount of time, I think you will benefit so greatly. If even I think even babysitters, honestly, I think that if you're spending an entire Saturday with a family, I think you would still benefit so profoundly from body activated learning.
Do you have any advice for parents? What would they look for in a class or a teacher, that kind of shows that they lean this direction as far as being sensory supportive?
I find that I was always recognizing the teachers that really listened to the children, not just hearing them, but really listening to them and listening to what they weren't saying. Like you can tell there are teachers, there are people in life. And so I always looked for those people that you could tell were hearing all the unasked questions
Mhm.
from the child or
Mhm.
from you. Like, and they see your kids. I don't know how to explain it other than you're going to recognize it when you see it.
Yeah.
And if you don't see that, you can keep moving on. Like we went through multiple swim teachers, we went through multiple um experiences
Yeah.
to find people that really heard and saw and understood. And when we saw it, when we recognized it, we made heaven move it, heaven and earth move to make it possible for my child to interact with that grown up.
Yeah.
So you will find them. You'll find them in babysitters, you'll find them in camps. And if your child is not really being heard and you can see that, you can advocate for your child. Even if, you don't like their camp counselor or whatever, you can advocate and you can say, hey, are there any other counselors? Like look at the other teenagers, because some people just have it naturally. They haven't even been trained, but they would benefit from training. But some people just naturally hear who your child is.
Yeah.
And the grown-ups that are almost shouting orders or drill sergeant-y or my way or the highway, if you can avoid them, avoid them, because there are people who respond to that. But I don't think a child, or at least not my children, with their sensory needs could adapt. They couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it
And
was
that's a
it was
really, I mean, I think adapt is a really important word, right? Like everybody needs to be able to adapt and respond to the world around them. But when you have sensory issues, when you have other disabilities, when you have
Mhm.
extra learning needs, it's harder for you to adapt than
Yeah.
someone else because it takes you longer to kind of figure it out. So
Mhm.
having someone who's very sometimes structure is good, but having someone whose expectations are a little bit too rigid as opposed
Mhm.
to being able to adapt themselves to meet you where you're at, can make um, it much harder on a child who just can't meet an expectation but really wants to.
Exactly. And they do want to meet the expectations. I
Yeah.
think more than anything else, my kids at least, they want to make their teachers happy. So if they're not able to do that, then it's much harder for them to keep wanting to adapt and keep wanting to try to overcome whatever they need to overcome in that moment, because there has to be a motivation there too. Like
Right.
you already have your challenge, whatever your challenge is. Maybe it's your swimsuit is too tight, whatever it is, there's already a challenge,
Yeah.
but you have to want to overcome it a little bit,
Right.
at least,
Right.
especially as you get
And
older and have a little bit more control.
to your point, that you mentioned earlier about having kids want to show up at the classroom versus trying to opt out and refuse,
Hmm.
the positive coping strategy is, even though it's hard, I'm with someone who makes me feel safe and gives my body what it needs, so I want to keep coming,
Hmm.
versus, someone who is not doing that for your child, and it's like they wake up every morning and they're so anxious about going to the class that they can't get themselves there, because there always just needs to be that person who kind of makes you feel safe so
Yeah,
that you can get into the things that are harder for you.
exactly. Exactly.
And being safe really, means expanding your awareness of how the other kids are working, but also your toolbox on how to meet those diverse needs
Mhm.
of any kid who kind of comes into your classroom. What do you think would be the best way to have them kind of introduce body activated learning to people that they want to get certified? As a teacher,
Mhm.
if someone came to you and they wanted you to, consider adding something to your repertoire,
Mhm.
what would you recommend are good ways for parents to kind of
To
get
approach.
reach out to their
Well, I have
teachers
been
and maybe
approached.
introduce them? Yeah.
Yeah, I have been approached by multiple parents. Usually, I think honesty of why you want your teacher to incorporate is the best. I have given this book to some of my kids' teachers with success. I have never had fight back on it. I'm sure there are teachers that would, but I've never had that. And it might be because my approach was one of just pure honesty. Like, this is something we are incorporating at home. and I will maybe even mark a few pages in a book to say, these are some of the exercises I am seeing the best results with. Maybe if you have time, I know you're busy, I know you have a lot of other resources to engage with. If you only looked at these couple of pages, maybe it would help my child in the class.
Mhm.
When I've had parents talk to me about something that their child's working on, I'm always very happy to take it to the next step. I had a child who had a language delay, and the mom just said, "We're really, really working on the E sound." And I was like, "Thank you for telling me, because now instead of singing a song on vocables that are ba ba ba, I can sing a song on vocables that are b b b."
Yeah.
Like, it is such an easy switch for me
Yeah.
because you've shared that information with me.
Yeah.
I think, I really believe every human being that has gone into the profession of education has gone into it with the intent of helping children. Like, that has been their intention from the very beginning. They only want to make life better for all their children, but it is overwhelming with how many resources there are. So anything that can be narrowed down, like I was given one sound to integrate,
Yeah.
not just my child's having problems with sounds. And I wasn't like an open-ended question that I had to go solve. I was given a very specific way to help. And like when I, post-it note a book with just a couple of exercises, these are specifically helping my child now. If you can, I think teachers really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful, wonderful tool that I've seen teachers have responded to me. They've asked if they could keep the book. Like at the end of the year, they're like, "Oh, they thought I was just borrowing the book for the year." I'm like, "Oh no, if you want to keep it for your future students,
Yeah.
I'm happy to pay it forward." And they've been, "Oh, thank you so much." And I've had, others saying, "Oh, give me, what's the website again? I have to order a book for someone else." So
Mhm.
it's definitely an appreciated tool, but I think it helps the manner in which I'm giving it to them. I'm giving them an opportunity, not a directive. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Right. And you made a very good point about not overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
Like and actually, I mean, you'll notice when I turn the book sideways, this is not, a 150-page resource with 50
Right.
million exercises, but that's on purpose.
Hmm.
Because you're smart enough, if you work with kids, you've got a toolbox full of different games and things, and you're looking for resources. Those big books, they sit on the shelf, right?
Hmm.
But it's so much that the point is really like, this is your roadmap, right? I can pick a couple little things, the blue and the blue part of the roadmap. It's not overwhelming. I'm never doing more than like three or four if I, even if I go through all the sequence. So it's not, and picking a couple out ahead of time, like if you've tried them with your child and you know that they work.
Hmm.
There's no equipment. There's no big thing to read at the beginning that says, oh, you have to learn all these, principles to be
Right.
able to do it. You can do it without actually having that much knowledge.
Yeah.
But there's so much knowledge and understanding that went into it
Hmm.
that you don't have to overthink it. We did the thinking for you, but you just have to implement it and try it, in small doses. And if it's
Yes.
one or a couple exercises here or there, it's not overwhelming. And if you're going to be moving with your class anyway, why not? I'm not asking you to learn an entire new program that is, outside of your comfort zone. So
Exactly.
do you think you're just doing it in your class, and what you're really giving, are life skills, and you're really changing the way that a person's body is able to adapt and respond so that they
Yeah.
can get through the world easier?
Yeah. Because like you said, they're able to respond instead of able to cope.
Mhm.
Wouldn't it be nice to be in a world where we weren't just coping all the time, but responding? A
Definitely,
much
definitely.
happier world to live in.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for being with me today. I think we
Thank
had
you for
a
having
fantastic
me.
conversation, and I'm so glad that we got to really talk about all of this stuff. And hopefully, if you're interested, if you've enjoyed this interview and learned a lot from the wonderful stories that Natasha has shared, please go to bodyactivatedlearning.com. We have free resources that you can download as a parent. We also have the cards and the books where we put together a nice combo pack for you if you just want to get everything and get going. And we also have the level 1 certification available that is a self-paced course where you can get certified in body activated learning, not just in the exercises, but understanding how to apply it in everyday activities. And last but not least, if you really feel like you need extra help, we've also started a parent group coaching program that we do on Saturday morning to give you a space to connect with other parents and kind of, talk about some of these things you might be struggling with and strategies, that you can get for yourself and your child. So thank you so much, Natasha.
Thank
I'm
you.
so glad to hear that you're paying it forward and that other people are benefiting and that your kids just keep coming back because they know that you're the go-to. So
I hope so.